All right, thank you, and karibuni. Omar Hassan, you will open the meeting today for us with a word of prayer.
Okay, thank you very much. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله رب العالمين الرحمن الرحيم مالك يوم الدين إياك نعبد وإياك نستعين اهدنا الصراط المستقيم الصراط الذين أنعمت عليهم غير المغضوب عليهم ولا الضالين آمين. لم نشرح لك صدرك ووضعنا عنك وزرك الذي أنقض ظهرك ورفعنا لك ذكرك فإن مع العسر يسرا إن مع العسر يسرا فإذا فرغت فانصب إلى ربك فارغب. فضل سبحان ربك رب العزة عما يصفون والسلام على المرسلين الحمد لله رب العالمين.
Thank you. Now that I mentioned your name, you can introduce yourself.
My name is what the chair said, Hassan Omar, a member of this committee.
My name is Catherine Wambilianga, a member of this committee, County MP Bungoma.
My name is Aaron Cheruyot, member of this committee.
Eugene Omalo, member of this committee. My name is Opio Wandai, member of the committee.
I'm Stephen Kalonzo Musyoka, member of the committee and co-chair.
Kimani Shongwa, member of the committee and co-chairing. Welcome. I think we'll also, I may know all of you, but not everybody may know all of you. You will introduce yourselves, at least the team that is presenting at the front. And if you have anybody who will be backing up, you can introduce them. Let me begin by apologizing. I know we're running about an hour late. And some of you are here before 9. So our apologies. Now, members of this committee, some travel from the villages in the morning. Our other apology is that we were not able to offer you even a cup of tea as you waited, courtesy of the CS National Treasury. We have no tea budget, and only the CS National Treasury can tell you where there is no cup of tea, CS Davis. So karibuni, maybe you can begin with introductions, beginning with the one who has refused to give us a cup of tea.
Thank you very much and good morning. My name is Chuguna Dungu. I'm the Cabinet Secretary to the National Treasury and Economic Planning. Sorry about the constraints that we are facing, but let me tell you that I know the streets of the city and I live in Kenya, so I know the constraints. But we can talk more about that. At a personal level, I'll provide some tea.
Good morning. My name is Davis Chirchir, Cabinet Secretary, Energy and Petroleum. And I'm here with my PS Alex Washira, PS Energy, PS Liban, where are you Liban? Mohammed Liban, PS Petroleum. I've seen Kipto Bergoria, the Director General for EPRA, Energy and Petroleum Regulatory. Who else did I see? And a couple of technical staff. Thank you.
Good morning, Chair. My name is Charles Hinga. I'm the Principal Secretary in the State Department for Housing and Urban Development. I'm here with my technical team from my office, Wahome, who's in the funding work stream. Thank you.
My name is Alex Kamawashira, Principal Secretary, State Department for Energy. Thank you. Rugo.
Good morning. My name is Dr. Abraham Rugo Mureu. I'm the Executive Director of the International Budget Partnership Kenya. And I'm accompanied here by my colleagues, Senior Program Officer John Kinodia and our Research Analyst John Kinodia and Cuba Houghton, who is our Research Analyst. Thank you very much.
Assalamu alaikum. My name is Bilo Carroll. I used to be in the same industry you guys were in. I'm now a businessman. In my free time, I look after what the people on this table do, and that's why I'm here. Thank you.
Thank you, Senator. You have nobody accompanying you. Thank you for... I also see the Parliamentary Budget Office, Director Masinde behind. I see former Governor Nyeri behind there also. And they are here, some as observers, and someone like Masinde has been a participant from last week. So we welcome you. I don't know who wants to start. I know...
Before they start, let me join Kimani also in welcoming you. So good to see you. I know that you're going to see as Treasury, used to be Central Bank Governor. It's a very generous soul. So I pity you for what you're going through. I worked with you, worked with Davis Chirchir. I was even giving out secrets to Kimani about, I know your village. We know you, Bilo, amazing man. Hinga, we waited for you, but you're in South Africa. We really want to hear from you. We know you. And so we're going to engage in a very honest conversation, which Kenyans, as you may know, are truly following. And we hope at the end of your presentation, you'll be able to assist us as a committee not to fall short of Kenyans' expectations on this very critical matter of the cost of living. We decided to single out cost of living out of our retreat in Mentaita, and we felt we needed a bit more input from the experts themselves. I'm sure you may have heard from some of your colleagues who came before us last week. So, karibuni sana.
Sante, I was asking, I don't know how we proceed. We have a program. The CS National Treasury was listed as the first one, then energy, then housing, Bill Okero, and Abraham in that order. But I was proposing, since all these things may end up in the National Treasury, we finish off with the National Treasury. Probably begin with energy and housing, because they have also requested they're appearing before their respective committees on budget issues. So I was proposing we start with them, if you can agree amongst yourselves who to start. Davis?
Agreed, we can start.
Okay.
How do we start?
We were giving the others about 20 minutes max.
Yes.
You just give, there's a guide on what you are to address, I think in the letter that was sent to you. Yeah. And once you finish, we'll ask you to just sit in there. It would probably be good to just hear Hinga a bit, then Bilo, I'm sure, having been in the petroleum industry, is here to hear from you also, and you would also want to hear his take, and the same with Abraham. Then we can conclude with the CS National Treasury. If we take about 20 minutes each, if you can take less, the better. And if you have a written presentation that you can share with the Secretariat, it would help us also. If you want to project, I'm sure there are those who wanted to project. Projectors are ready also.
Thank you, Chair and Co-Chair and honorable members of this National Dialogue Committee. Thank you for inviting us. Let me confirm honorable members, that we did receive the invitation dated 24th of October to appear before this National Dialogue Committee, and we have a written presentation which we have submitted. Chair, outside the formal presentation, let me say we're all concerned, particularly the Ministry of Energy, at the cost of living and energy being a major co-driver of inflation, because it is basically energy is employed in very many facets of our lives, from transportation to powering industry, and so on and so forth. So anything that impacts on the cost of energy impacts on the inflation and the cost of living. And therefore, we are, as you are, looking for ways every day to see how to bring down and make our economy a competitive destination for investors, where cost of living for our people who are employed in industry would be able to make this economy a competitive destination so that we can attract investors. Chair, let me say as opening remarks that the recent happenings, particularly the post-COVID recovery period, where we've seen inflation in economies like the US, Canada, soaring to a high of 9%, is something that is being seen maybe in the last, 22 years, where we see Fed raising interest from a low of 1.5% to a 5.4% today, and then therefore causing the challenge of dollar unavailability in that tightening of monetary policy, and us seeing particularly in the petroleum sector unavailability of dollars because investors find it better to have their dollars sitting in investments, cash deposits, as opposed to allowing them to trade. But that is basically a post-COVID recovery of the inflation, where the U.S. has decided to basically mop up the dollars they had issued during COVID to sustain their economies. And so that challenge is there. It's a global challenge. Those of us who trade in tea are unable to sell our tea in the international market because of unavailability of dollars in Pakistan, in Egypt, in Iran. And whereas we need those dollars to procure products which we don't produce as Kenya, like petroleum, pharmaceuticals, and all the other products. And lately, when we have a deficit in food because of the climate change issues and the fact that we have not been able to sustain food security, we need dollars to basically import food to sustain our people. And this has seriously impacted, and like I said, energy, petroleum alone, honorable members, do have a requirement of $500 million on monthly basis. We import products into Kenya worth $500 million on monthly basis. We bring in 8 cargoes, 4 cargoes of diesel. A cargo is 80,000 metric tons. We bring in 4 cargoes of PMS, that is super or petrol, and we bring in 1 cargo of DPK, dual-purpose kerosene. And at a volume of about 750 cubic meters or meter cube, that is about $500 million every month. And to be able to, under the OTS system, honorable chairs, where the product will come into Kenya under OTS and be off-taken by the petroleum companies. Luckily, this product came off balance sheet. It is not traded by government. It is traded by the oil industry. And when it comes into the Kenya under the OTS system, what we do immediately is they have to off-take the product within 5 days. So you see a sucking of $80 million $160 million because we receive 2 cargoes every 2 weeks. So we'll require to pay $160 million every week to be able to offtake 2 cargoes, and a cumulative of $500 million for the month. And that is why we had the late nomenclature of G2G, where we went into deferred issuance of LCs, which would service after 6 months. And what that entailed, Honorable Chair, was to basically say instead of paying for petroleum products on spot purchase every 5 days when the ship docks to Mombasa, on an LC that is issued and unwound immediately, let's go into relationship with governments who would understand the situations that we found ourselves in and do an MOU, a memorandum of understanding, do a framework agreement where we would bring products on deferred LCs that would service every 6 months, or every LC would be serviced at an age of 6 months, and that basically there will be no accumulation of paying 6 months at a go, but paying as they mature for every cargo. And we did that, honorable members, to basically delay the exiting of $500 million every month, to address with my colleague, the CS Treasury, the macroeconomic issues of ensuring how do we allow those $500 million to be available to the pharmaceutical, to be available to some debt swaps which had been, some swaps which had been done on the Kenya shilling, awaiting the improvement of the dollar liquidity or availability in the country. How do we deal with the food challenge, given the drought that ravaged this region because of the climate change issues for the last 5 years? And so we were able to negotiate with friendly countries like Saudi Arabia, who are the world leading. I think they control 22% of the world oil reserves. We did work with Abu Dhabi and ENOC to work on a framework agreement that would give us products on deferred LCs and therefore delay the exiting of dollars for a period of 6 months. That, honorable members, did give us some benefits in terms of managing the interbank spread, the speculative tendencies which were there, where everybody of the 100, over 100 oil marketing companies were running around town every day looking for dollars for the spot purchase, and exacerbating the depreciation. Because the Minister for OCS National Treasury here will tell us how we've been able to slow down depreciation of the Kenya shilling from a high of 3% to some 1%, albeit the depreciation is still there because the tightening of the monetary policy continues because of the background I gave in basically the U.S. trying to manage its inflation. And we've seen countries like China and Russia trading in ruble, trading in their currencies, almost doing a barter trade in efforts to dollarize their economies, and so on and so forth. I've mentioned about tea. Those of us who trade in tea currently are not able to sell our tea because those other countries out there don't have dollars to pay us, and so on and so forth. So this has been one thing that we've done, Chair. We were able then, under that framework agreement, to negotiate for freight and premium because the petroleum products are traded on Platts. The OPEC countries do fixed prices every month on basis of products which is released to the market every month. So because oil is internationally traded and we've got Platts pricing, the only area you compete on is freight and premium. The cost of bringing the product and the premium which is charged by the oil marketing companies, which we did negotiate and got a fairly competitive rate. Kenya today enjoys freight and premium on diesel of $88 per meter cube, against what is obtaining today in the region, where we've seen a high of 260. I think currently Tanzania is having a freight and premium of about $160 per metric, per cubic meter or metric ton, if you do some literal conversion. So a high of 160 against Kenya 88. For PMS, we are currently having $95 per metric ton for super or petrol, whereas the region is having a fairly high rate, which I've shown in that document that I did circulate. And we've been, because we're dealing with a government to governments, agreed to that whenever the rates come down in the region, we are able to open that framework agreement and be competitive so that we are always below the pricing in the region. Albeit we can't do much on the international pricing of petroleum, which has soared from a $70 to $80 to $90. And I read an article in the Financial Times the other day because of the Hamas and Israeli war, that that the international prices could go up to $150. And that would literally mean our products going to a high of 300 shillings per liter at the pump. We hope it doesn't get there. So we are almost managing scaling the heights as we chew the gum every day to make sure we do manage this frame. And because I did say, Chair, that these are products which are real drivers of inflation. And so we are conscious, honorable members, we are working on it on a day-to-day basis to make sure that though it's a global challenge, we do obtain the best pricing for our country. Kenya is a gateway for Uganda, Kenya is a gateway for Congo, South Sudan. And so we are not just managing for Kenya, we are trying to really obtain the best as a gateway because of our port of Mombasa, which services the other countries which are landlocked in the region. So far, what are the benefits? I've mentioned a bit that we've slowed down the depreciation, honorable members, chairs. We've managed the interbank. I think Professor Njuguna will tell us, and I'm quite happy today because when I go to these kind of meetings alone, and I talk to so much finance, and I'm lucky today to have the financial experts to support me to talk to the rate of depreciation, talk to the interbank, talk to what kind of swaps have been unwound, and the kind of profits which the multinationals have been able to expatriate, because it's also not good for investments when dollars are not available in the country. People like Safaricom doing business, and when they make a profit, they need to take their profit out, and that is really why they invest in the region. If you cannot take out your money, like sometimes in countries, our neighbors like Ethiopia, it becomes a disincentive for investors. So really, in terms of availability, in spite of the fact that it is still tight, if we did not do the G2G, the situation would have been really dire today. I don't know whether we could possibly be at 200 plus today. But the fact that we've been able to slow down sucking or exiting of $500 million every month from petroleum is a real big gain. What we're also able to do, honorable members, on petroleum is to basically say, over this period, why don't we then offtake the product as they land in Mombasa on Kenya shillings? A Kenya shilling which then sits in escrow account, earning on T-bill rate, and the T-bill rate will go to the pump over that period before we pay the international market. So the interest that is earned in the agreement that have been done, the commercial agreement that supports this transaction, is taken to the pump to support the depreciation. So the yield, actually T minus 2 goes to the pump, the minus 2 goes to the banks. We also, similarly for dollars, which we are holding, because under this framework, the dual-purpose kerosene, which is really the aviation fuel, is taken on the dollar by the flight industry, and the product that goes to our neighboring countries is taken on the dollar. So we do get 40% product being paid on dollar, while the Kenya product is paid on the shilling. The dollar is also invested. I think we are sitting on some $1.2 billion today. We've already serviced some 10 cargoes. And the dollar, like I said, is also invested on SOFRA minus 2. The yield also goes to the pump to support the industry in terms of the depreciation. So even as we sit today, except that we are unwinding the dollars, or rather removing the dollars as they mature, we are sitting on some $1.2 billion to support the repayments of the product as they mature, as the LC mature after 6 months, on the age of 6 months for that matter. So that's what we've done on petroleum. Honorable members, chairs, we are very conscious. We are working on it every day. We're looking at the region, like I said. If the freight and premium comes down, we open the contract with the three governments, Saudi, ADNOC, Abu Dhabi, and Emirates, to say, look, since you have this contract for 6 months, pricing in Tanzania today, in South Africa, go to UK, go to US. You'll possibly, I don't know whether we gave the figures there, but in some jurisdictions, they are paying as much as 300 shillings per litre, where we are paying 200. So it's a global challenge. We are managing honorable members on a day-to-day, like I said, and we are looking for innovative solutions. What we've done lately is to renegotiate the freight and premium. Like I said, it's an open, it's not locked under the framework agreement to bring it down. What we are doing after the proof of the system working, we've asked those countries to remove what we call confirmation. KCB alone has opened, I think, LC's worth about 800 billion. They are supported by Stanbic, supported by a number of banks, Mauritius Bank. And what has happened is, because of the risk and exposure of a bank not being able to pay, or the risk for that matter, there is need for confirmation, not reconfirmation. And because the system is working well, we are now talking to those governments to say, do we really need to confirm these LCs, which were priced at 0.7% of the cost of the, and we have negotiated to basically pledge the cash in the account today because the system is working, and therefore confirmation is removed. So we get another benefit of 0.7%, which would otherwise go to confirmation for the investment grade banks or the AAA banks who confirm and take the risk out of KCB in case of a liquidity challenge, or KCB is not able to pay for those, or the risk taker for the LC issuing banks. So we are now removing. We are in the process of removing the confirmation, and we will subsequently see slight reduction on the cost of the financing facilities for this product. So that's what we are doing with petroleum. Unfortunately, there's nothing much we can do on the Platts pricing because they are set by OPEC. But on freight and premium, I can assure these honorable members and sitting that we are doing our best, and possibly Kenya is obtaining the best in the region because of the fact that the OTA system, the open tender system, is all employed in this G2G to be able to secure the support on this driver of inflation and cost of living. That's the much I would like to say for now. For petroleum, I think the details are in the paper which I've circulated. For power, because of time, power is another big driver. It's another really big driver, and we are conscious about the cost of power in this country. It's expensive. You will recall, members, that Kenya predominantly generated power from hydro. We ran Masinga, Kindaruma, Gitaru, Kiambere for a long time until we were hit by the drought of the early year 2000, when we had a huge drought, and we brought in the Agrecos and the IPPs, which today are being seen to be very expensive because hydro today dispatches at about 3 to 4 cents US dollar per kilowatt hour. Very good pricing. You cannot get that kind of pricing anywhere. But because of hydrology, in the year 2000, we had to bring in these power generators that were quick to deploy. Because when you have shortage of power, you can go to the shops and buy a diesel engine and start it now and sort out your power problem. But it comes at a very huge price. They dispatch power to the grid today at anything up to 20 cents, 25 cents. And even when you go to Moroni, the Moroni GT, it dispatches power at 72 cents, 52 cents US, which is about 70 shillings per kilowatt hour. When hydro should ordinarily be dispatching at less than 7 shillings, we are dispatching at 72 shillings in Moroni. So because of that, the country then embarked on development of geothermal. And I think Kenya today is lauded as the 6th largest geothermal country utilizing geothermal, a very difficult power to develop because you do your service studies, you drill. It's like oil exploration. You drill 3 kilometers And today we have got about 49% of our economy being supported by geothermal. So predominantly today, what we call a base load, which was yesterday hydrology or hydro, is today geothermal. And what has really helped us today is the fact that the leaders of yesterday worked so hard to develop geothermal. And if I just give some numbers to appreciate that we are not in a bad place, Tanzania today is load shedding 10 hours every day. So 10 hours, you don't have power, not because it is a blackout. It's been switched off because there is not enough power in the country. Zambia, Malawi, South Africa are load shedding into 12, 14 hours per day. Again, because of the climate change issues affecting us. Even Ethiopia, who gives us 200 megawatts at very competitive pricing of 6 cents US through a PPA we signed some times back. We've signed for 200, they are not able to give us 200. They are giving us 100 because they don't have enough water. The floods in Marsabit that we saw in the last 3-4 days have helped them to put some water in the dams. And we are now seeing slight improvement on what they are able to give us. So because of that, honorable members, hydrology, even as we speak today, though I went to the year 2000, we've not seen good rains in the last 3-4 years. We don't have water. In the data, and I'll be happy to give a supplemental onto that report which we gave, we've been dispatching 0 megawatts from Masinga for the last 2 months. We don't have water in Masinga. Even with these rains, the eastern and Your Excellency Kalonzo, you may be aware that whereas we've seen in the last 2, 3, 4 weeks rains in the west of Kenya, we've not seen much rain in the east part of Kenya, though we are beginning to see water coming up now. At a height of a low of 1035 meters above sea level, we are only having 2 meters now after the rains have just come in, but we are still not dispatching. We are doing 0 out of Masinga today.
I was there yesterday, and I can tell you it's beginning to fill up.
It's beginning to come up. In fact, we've seen 3 meters today. Of today, we are 3 meters above 1035. So, honorable members, why am I going there? When we don't have water, which was predominantly the generator for Kenya, though geothermal has really been useful lately because I said as a base load, it's not already doing 49%, we have to run the diesel. When you run the diesel, which I did give a background that it is dispatching at 70 shillings, it is dispatching at 50 shillings, you do expect the cost of power to go up. When Dr. Siror, the CEO for Kenya Power, spoke to the media the other day, he was like, would it be better not to have power at all to service a hospital or to have expensive power? It's not because we want to dispatch expensive power. If Masinga is at 0, even for you and me, you would go out and start your generator because it's better to have that expensive power than no power at all. So given the challenge of climate change and mitigation and actions that are ravaging, or rather the whole world is talking about today, as Kenya, we are accelerating geothermal development. We just brought in an additional 35 megawatts in Menengai. We are bringing another 70 megawatts. We are drilling in Paka Silali. We are at 100 megawatts of steam, and we want to put in converters to get them into generate power as quickly as possible. And these come in geothermal today because of our knowledge and capacity and availability. Geothermal is available 24/7. The solar and the wind, which is talked about on climate change platform to save the world, is not available at night. Solar is not available. As we speak, at peak hour today, we need 2160 megawatts today, but we don't have enough power. We are currently load shedding, though quite small. So we really need to bring in the base load, and solar is not available at night. When it rains like it's raining now, the Lake Turkana 310 megawatts dispatches at 20%. Kipeto dispatches at very low percentage when it rains. I think when it rains, because of the vertical force of rain, the wind almost comes down to 0. And so we have a challenge, honorable members. We are on top of it. We are quickly and like the previous regimes working on geothermal to support our base loads. We're trying to now do hybridization so that we are able to store solar and wind when it is there because of intermittence, because the price of batteries have significantly come down today. Solar panels have come down. So we're trying to deploy in the current pricing cycle 23-27, we've got some 200 megawatts of storage, battery storage system to store the solar when it is there and we don't need, because honorable chairs and members, the problem with this intermittent power, they come on a PPA framework called take or pay. When it is there, you must take it, otherwise you still pay. So why don't we store and then we use it when we need it? Because when it comes in what we call economic order merit of dispatch, they take priority number one. Whenever it comes, you take it, because if you don't take it, you still pay. So we then bring in batteries to store that power and use it when we need it, because the price of technology for storage today has come down, and then basically be able to also reduce the intermittence and stabilize the grid. One other thing which we are doing, honorable members, and which should have been done yesterday, is to deconstrain some of the transmission systems. When I came in, when I came in, we found, for example, let me use one, Takwel, Otum, Kitale network or line, not having capacity to transmit generation from Takwel. Because when we developed Selenkei, Sedet, and Alton, the solar power plants in the west of Rift, the transmission line capacity was not upgraded. And for the last 4 years, we are not transmitting, or we are not utilizing Takwel, which comes to the grid at 3 cents, 4 cents, because the transmission line is not able to carry both the solar from Alton, Selenkei, and Sedet, and carry the Takwel because of the order of merit of dispatch, take or pay. So what do? We carry the expensive power from solar, which is intermittent and not good for the grid, and the hydro is sitting idle because we do not put some investment of 300 million to complete the capacity of the line to evacuate that power. That is currently going on. We'll finish in maybe another 2 months. Similarly for Narok, Bomet, where the network to Olkaria has been built, the network from Bomet has been built all the way to Migori to support the tea factories in Bomet, Kericho, all the way to Awendo. And so we've got load shedding in Awendo, in Bomet, and Kericho in the evening. We don't have enough voltages. We are using Moroni 73 shillings power plant to support the voltages, because we have not built Narok Bomet to allow the Olkaria power to go all the way to Awendo. So again, we are currently sourcing a contractor. We've got funding, and we'll get most of that cheap geothermal power to go all the way down to Migori County and service that western part of the country. And these are network issues that should have really been addressed in terms of getting the grid more stable and being able to off-take or to carry the kind of load, the kind of power that we need in those regions in terms of managing demand and supply for the country. Honorable members, we are conscious. We are really working on the 2 areas in petroleum and energy, in the grid capacity, in generation, confirming and assuring ourselves that even as we go forward to generate new power, we should go to what you'd call auction for licenses, so that they compete on prices of licenses as opposed to coming and negotiating privately in my office or in another office to generate power, when they can be, the auction process can be done in the open, and the best price IPP can take that license and generate power for us. Unfortunately, members, I must also say, power is not a quick fix. When we plan power today for the next 5 years, what we're doing is not for tomorrow. And so unless we do what we must do today, we'll have problems in 27, 28, 2029. So the challenges we are seeing today are the challenges of the yesteryears because of, and as we speak, you remember we had this moratorium. We don't have much power plants being built today, and as I talk to load shedding, what power plants are almost reaching completion to support us tomorrow, 25, 26, 27. Those are the challenges we are crumbling with, but I want to assure our honorable members that we are on top of it, and we'll ensure that we do not get into where the region is because of not planning. And so the leaders of both houses, when we remove the moratorium that was placed by the executive sometimes back, Parliament put another moratorium. We need to remove that moratorium so that we can make sure that the power plants who are ready to dispatch or the licenses that need to be signed can be signed so that we do not have challenges in 26, 27, and 28 where we could fall into where the region is today, load shedding 10, 12, 13, 14 hours a day. Honorable members, I submit. Thank you.
As we propose that we listen to your colleagues. I think that's okay, honorable colleagues, whether we listen to the presentations before we make comments or interventions. Yeah? So who is the next one to go? Hinga.
The honorable chairs and members of this committee, I'm delighted to be here this morning and humbled also to be making this presentation before my seniors. Allow me to begin by making a disclaimer. One is that, as you all know, that this housing levy is one of the things that was highly litigated. It is still before the courts. So today I'll try and avoid going to the merits and demerits of the housing levy per se, because that judgment will be made on the 24th of November, after which we should be free to talk about it in greater detail, but I'll try and cover as much as I can. Number two, Chair, is that at the end of my submission, hoping that the work of this committee will effect some changes in the Constitution at some point, hopefully, I would like to submit two requests. One is that under Schedule 4 of our Constitution, where the Senate religiously allocates resources to the counties, there is a small omission in that our Constitution has envisioned urban areas to be devolved, but it is missing in Schedule 4. And what that means is that our urban areas are not getting any resources unless it is the money from the World Bank that comes in as conditional grants. And that is a big problem because our cities and towns are dying and decaying because of lack of investment. And number two, I'd like to make a submission before this committee that we need to relook at how we address the issue of marginalization. I think the way we have defined marginalization, it is a little bit unfair to the class of people we call the urban poor. And I'd like to submit before this committee that the urban poor is probably the most marginalized person in Kenya. And we need to relook at how we define marginalization, because if we only define marginalization based on areas, and yet there is somebody who is probably a meal away from starvation, a person who has no basic sanitation, they actually pay to use ablution facilities. For someone who faces what we call the penalty of poverty, which is they pay 172% more for water than you and I. They pay up to 147% more for electricity. I think it is the high tide the way there are huge population. Chair, before I then get into the presentation, allow me to set a little bit of context. We all know the issue of the housing levy. At some point, I had to run to my good senior, Professor Ndongo, because I was confused whether we were actually debating a housing bill or the finance bill. And so all that sweating chair that you are seeing coming out is because I was...
You become national very famous with that sweating. And I'm happy you're talking about it because we're wondering what has become of Hinga.
Let me say, the Honorable Vice President, that when I went to Professor Ndongo for some counseling, I was expecting some lessons in economics, but he referred me to the Bible. And, and he read for me Genesis chapter 3, verse 19. And he told me, Hinga, out of the sweat of your brow, you shall eat. So sweating is biblical.
But the Bible seems to have helped in not sweating today.
Maybe a bit too early to call it. Chair, there is a very interesting report that was done by the World Bank in the year 2017. Now, like anybody who like to make comments on the issue, matters to do with housing, just get a copy of that. It's available online. It is called Unavailable and Unaffordable. And I believe this study painted a very good picture about the housing situation in Kenya. There are things that are indisputable. And I think where things become a bit murky is the how to solve. But there are certain things that are not in dispute. Number one, we are one of the fastest urbanizing countries in the world. We have over 500,000 people who are coming to urban areas every year. That is a fact. Number two, Chair, is that if you look at the percentage of what you call the urban population, at the moment, and these are very old statistics, which is 2019, after the census, we had about 6.5 million Kenyans living in slums. That is also a fact. So if you're adding 500,000 people every year into urban areas, when they come to those urban areas, what do they find? Chair, they find something which is interesting, and I know a professor here will back me up because of it's a lot more in economics. Chair, what you find is that we have very low incomes in Kenya. And where you have low incomes, and then you have got very expensive land, ordinarily then what happens is that rentals tend to be very high. Okay, low incomes, expensive land, rents tend to be very high. And so, therefore, your working class, I'm not talking about people who are not working. I'm talking about your working class, people who wake up, some even earlier than we do, to go to work, cannot be able to afford the kind of rentals that we find in the urban areas. And then what happens is that they get pushed out in a process which is called gentrification. You start pushing them out, okay? But where do they go? Some may say, why can they go to Mlolongo? Why can they go to Kitengela where there is a lot of land? The challenge, Chair, is that they need to be close to where they work. Because again, if they move further away from where they work, the cost of transport becomes a hindrance. So where do they go? They go and set up informal settlements. And that is why, Chair, as of 2019, we had 1,141 informal settlements in this country. They do nothing. If we do nothing about it, Chair, in a few years' time, our major cities will be nothing but major slums. So that's also an important context to be able to put. Now, there is a study that has been done by the Center for Affordable Housing in Africa. In 2016, Nairobi had been ranked as having the third most expensive land of the cities that were polled in Africa. Today, Nairobi has the most expensive land in the continent. So how do you have most expensive land? You have got very low incomes. And so this is an issue that I believe should be able to bring all of us together because it is ours to solve, irrespective of which political divide you come from. Even us who live in most affluent areas, you can attest that there is a slum next to where you live. And at some point, if we do nothing, a high wall is not going to keep you safe. There will be a slum right outside your gate. And so I believe that this issue of housing should actually not divide, but actually should bring people together. I was privileged to be in the last government, honorable chairs, and housing was part of the Jubilee agenda. Also, housing was a core pillar in the Azimio manifesto. As a matter of fact, where we ended, the Kenya Kwanza proposed 3% on the levy. We actually ended at where Azimio had proposed, which was 1.5%. So I would like to believe that if we are all genuine and we put away our political caps, we can be able to look at this matter of housing, soberly, and we can be able to agree. We may disagree, we may not agree on everything, but we agree we have a challenge. So, Chair, I'm going to go very quickly to the economics of housing, because I think that is very, very, very important, the real merits of the levy itself. So I have a presentation, Chair, which is, has 4 headings, which is a quick introduction, the economic context, the economic recovery, and then I'll go a little bit into the housing fund and offerings. Chair, the Kenya Kwanza government has a plan, and our plan is to have 1 million Kenyans owning their homes in this first dispensation. Now, Chair, the reason that number is not a thumbsuck, it is because in Kenya, we have a housing demand of 250 homes a year. The market is only able to produce 50,000. And of the 50,000, only 1,000 is affordable housing. So we have got 49,000 for the high end, that is a 3%. And then 97% of Kenyans are left with the 1,000 that is being produced by the market today. So our plan is ambitious and bold because we believe that we have a systemic failure in housing in Kenya. And for us to be able to understand how this systemic failure has to step back into history and realize that at the turn of independence, when we came up with the housing policy, we were, as a government, building homes through National Housing Corporation, site and service, and that happened until the late 80s, when the infamous, when we got into trouble with the IMFs and the World Bank at the time, and we got into structural adjustments. And at that time, one of the things that we were told to exit from was housing. And from that point to date, the likes of National Housing Corporation has never received any funding from government. Most of you perhaps have lived in estates that were funded through National Housing Corporation or the old municipal councils. So, Chair, let me go quickly to the economics of housing, which I think is very important to understand. One, Chair, is that we know right now we are in a bit of an economic meltdown of some sort. And this did not just start now. It has been there from COVID. We never recovered from COVID. We are in Russia. We never recovered. And we are having challenges because and when economies are contracting, Chair, the objective, the primary target is to make sure that you do not get into a recession. Getting into a recession, Chair, to get out of a recession is more expensive than preventing yourself getting into a recession. Now, Chair, as I said, the do nothing is not an option. And this is a case where you get presented with bad options. When you're going through an economic meltdown, when you look at the options that you have, very few of them are good options. Then when you take the context that our economies lack resilience, we don't have enough social safety nets so that when you have an economic meltdown, you can be able to send checks to the poor people and even to the working class who sometimes get laid off. Chair, we have a situation of dilapidated supply chains. So I don't know whether I'm going backwards or forward. Okay. Then, Chair, I read something yesterday in the Nation newspaper and I was a bit surprised by what I read there, because I guess trying to paint that this government has borrowed so much money, they failed to understand that part of the reason why our debt has increased, even without borrowing, is that because some of our borrowing is in hard currency and our shilling has depreciated. Even without borrowing, the debt has gone up. So our currency is devaluing, we have high inflation, we have rising interest rates, we have uncertainty that is there in the market. Chair, we have seen in our own context here, we have got a huge unemployment issue, we have a huge youth bulge, we have our economy is around contracting, manufacturing, we have had prolonged drought, we have had serious impact from COVID, and I've said, even other places like in the US, where they are increasing interest rates to manage their own inflation, it is actually causing capital flight. If you look today at the stock exchange, the shares are misbehaving, and some of those companies have very good fundamentals, but they are depreciating. So therefore, Chair, I really want to make this point very clear that, sometimes to the public, it looks like the policymakers, maybe we just sit down and we don't really apply our minds on some of these things. It is, I sat there when COVID came knocking on our doors. And when you looked at the options that we had, there was an inverse relationship between trying to contain the disease and the economy. And Chair, there were many examples. For example, South Africa went on to what is called hard shutdown. The effect of hard shutdown, you saw, was something which was called an insurrection. People got tired of being kept at home, and they went and broke into supermarkets and took all the booze. In Brazil, on the other hand, they assumed that this is like flu. Okay, so what did they do? They were relaxed, go to the beach, enjoy yourself, in Homa, tumeishi na Homa all this time. What happened? There were caskets that were being deposited at their state house because people died. So you're faced with very challenging and balancing situation. So, Chair, during that time, you are either going to go to austerity or you have got to increase government expenditure. Now, when you look at the Great Recession, which was in 2008, if you look at what the US and Europe did, they did the opposite of each other. The US went on a major capital investment in infrastructure. Europe, on the other hand, went on a serious austerity measure. What happened is that the US got out of the recession much faster. Europe, you saw the likes of Greece and all those other places, they had a lot of challenges. Another example, Chair, is in the 1930s when we had the Great Depression. And when FDR, then the president of the US, the strategies that he put, one of them was what is called the extended public works, which gave birth to something which is called the American Dream, which was many houses as you can, because as we get to the economics of housing, you'll understand why there was a focus on housing because of its long supply chain. So, Chair, So there are several strategies that can stem a recession under this condition. One of them is creating consumptive demand, encouraging spending, creating jobs in industries with multiplier effect. Now, Chair, and this is almost like a paradox, because you need to be spending where money is shrinking, because revenues are contracting. But you're saying you need to spend to be able to give people more money to spend so that you don't get into a recession. So, Chair, if you look at certain economies like the US, during this economic meltdown, what did they do? During COVID, what did they do? They printed money. They gave people checks. They did something which is called qualitative easing, which is they bought back their bonds. Why? Because they wanted to make sure that there is money circulating in the economy. Because when there is an economic meltdown, what you don't want to do is lack of that spending. And so, Chair, as I get now to the context of why we have put so much emphasis on housing, it is because in Kenya, we may not have the powers to print those checks. We may not be able to have the kind of monies to buy back our bonds. But there is something that we can be able to do. And what is that? We can be able to put checks in people's hands by having a deliberate plan that is focused on creating the consumptive demand while solving a decade or a century-old problem of housing. And that, Chair, brings me to the issue of the housing levy. So, Chair, as I've said, our investment in housing projects helps us to issue what is called the stimulus check, which will make the required investment in housing, which in turn will expand enterprise, and it will create jobs, and that will be to the benefit of the citizens. Now, it's important to understand why you want money to be spent, and especially when you're talking at the lowest level, which is the local economic area. It is because, especially when you're spending money at the bottom of the pyramid, that money tends to circulate around there. You see, today, if I gave my good friend Omar Hassan 10,000 shillings, he'll probably spend it. Okay, he may know he didn't partake some of those other drinks, so maybe not a good example. But maybe those are two drinks. Maybe he'll go spend that money outside the country. If you put 100 shillings,
it's okay. You can use Opio one day.
That's why, Chair, they were not served to tea. And we were served that drink is later.
So, Honorable Wandai, I can see you after this, and I'm sure. Anyway, on a serious note, so Chair, the impact of spending money at the bottom of the pyramid is that money actually never leaves. It keeps on circulating around that area. You don't need to be an economist to believe that. But Chair, there is something that is important to understand, is that it's not like Kenyans live in open spaces. Kenyans have houses, but those houses do not meet the basic definition, what is in our constitution and even in the UN, of what is decent housing. And that is why I believe the issue of housing was in all the major parties' manifestos, okay? Because we have a problem. But Chair, to solve this, you need scale, because it is the large economy, it's leveraging the large economies of scale that you can be able to produce the jobs that we want. Chair, we talk about manufacturing, and sometimes we talk about manufacturing in abstract terms. Question is, what are you manufacturing? What are you manufacturing? Because you must have a plan. What are you going to manufacture? That is why our plan, when you look at the long supply chain of housing, from this country we import hinges, Chair. Hinges we import. Now, I don't know, we can just look at this door here. And if you count, there are about 4 hinges on each door. On average, a house has 5 doors. So that means those are 20 hinges you can make from just one house. If you do 200,000 homes, you do the math. How many hinges are we talking about? And as much as hinges looks like something we should not be talking about in a national dialogue, hinges could end up being a big industry because you have created the consumptive demand. That is the plan, is create the demand, then create industries, because you must manufacture for something. And so those who don't understand why we have really put so much emphasis on housing is because of the long supply chain. So if you talk about hinges, think of it. How many nails do you need in 200,000 homes? It's about 5 million kgs of nails. That's another industry. We have doors, we have windows. As a matter of fact, as a ministry, we have itemized 69 items. 69, 1, 2, 3, 68, 69 items that will be produced locally because the materials are available locally, that we are going to do at scale and create the jobs. So, Chair, this housing levy provides us with the capital to be able to scale. Because for housing, the kind of capital that you're looking for is what is called long-term capital. And we don't have investors who are going to come in with long-term capital. They start looking at risk. And what is the first thing that they look at? They look at a hustler and they say, the only thing I can see is this guy will never be able to pay. So I can never build a house for this guy. So that's why, what do? The investors, they focus on you and I. Because we have a check, we have a salary, and by the way, it is not everybody who has a salary that can afford. Let me give you some shocking statistics, Chair. And these could be dated. So we will look at the latest information. But as of 2019, Chair, 50% of all payslip carrying Kenyans earned 50,000 shillings and below. Actually, 75%, sorry. 75% of all payslip carrying Kenyans earned less than 50,000 shillings. So maybe since then there's been several increases, but that number is still what it is. 150,000, the Kenyans who earn 150,000 and above are 3%. So if you don't have a plan, because of the low wages and because of the high rentals and the high income, you're going to continue having slums coming up every day. So, Chair, that is really the economics of housing. So what does that all end up in? 3 things that housing will be able to do. One is that injection, that money that you're getting has a huge multiplier effect. Economists tell us that we can add between $1.5 and $3 for every 1 shilling we invest in housing. That is why we love housing. If you take maybe roads or any other infrastructure, that multiplier effect is not as high. The other part is jobs that will be created. And I heard a lot of people talking about hinga nataka tu kujenga kazi yake ni ya mjengo. You know, okay, mjengo is still kazi. But the reality is, this plan gets our manufacturing alive. And that is where the jobs are created. As a matter of fact, let me take you quickly to this slide, I'll come back. Because this really demonstrates what I'm talking about. I've just taken one product, which is cement. And let's look at the value chain of cement. Chair, I know maybe the whatevers are not very clear, but I start with the yellow tracks there. And they're not yellow because of Kenya Kwanza colors. But Chair,
it's okay.
That is now, Chair, the cement manufacturing starts in quarry. It does not start in the cement factory. It starts in the quarries. So if we are going to do 200,000 units a year, we need 18 million bags of cement. 18 million bags of cement. We produce cement in Kenya. So we will have a lot of jobs at the guys who are in quarries. But then there is a guy who is excavating, there is a guy who is loading, there is a guy who is driving the truck. Those trucks, Chair, it's a huge economy, logistics. Those are new jobs you're going to create. Then the truck goes to the factory with the raw material. When you get to the factory, Chair, what do you find there? Okay? You have people who are going to offload. They're very different from those who are going to be putting it in the whole manufacturing process. And quickly, Chair, then there is another truck there, the red one now you can see. Why it is different is because this truck is not the same as the truck that took the limestone from the quarry. These are different. These are new job that you have created. Then it comes to the construction site. At the construction site, you still need people to offload. You have your batching plant. You've got people who mix the mortar. And some of them, you can see, we use wheelbarrows, and they will carry the mortar. And the guy who's carrying the mortar is very different from the guy who is actually doing the construction or fabricating the panels. Chair, this is just one product, which is cement. So I can tell you, Chair, that the economics of housing makes a lot of sense. And that is just one product. And you can take any other product, Chair. And we didn't even talk about packaging. There is a whole new packaging because those cement needs to be in different packages as they get taken to the site. Chair, you know, we talk about Juakali industries and we talk about informal traders. And sometimes we talk about them in abstract form. I have had a chance to interact with them, Chair. And let me tell you, these are some of the hard-working guys, but they do not get a fair share of the shake. And I'll tell you why. We experimented with a group, or 3 groups, of Ngong Road, Kamukunji, and Kariobangi, when we did Park Road housing. We gave them 7,000 doors to do. Chair, we gave them to do doors because we know they already know how to make doors. These guys, that 7,000 doors came, including installation, came to about 123 million. That's probably the biggest check they had ever seen. But Chair, what is the problem? Is that they know how to make doors, but between them and the user of the door, there are about 5 people who each make more money than them. They are the guys who are having to fabricate the doors, but several people in between are making more money, brokers, than these Juakali people. So how do we then get the Juakali people to formalize? This is what we did. We gave them a contract to do 7,000 doors. It was 123 million. They did the doors, Chair, and I can confirm they did good doors. And they were paid. And Chair, 58 of them ended up being homeowners in the same houses where they were building those doors. And the final thing is, when they got paid, because they were informal, they didn't know about a guy called KRA. And soon, KRA came knocking on their doors to say, you owe me money. And so they came running to me and they said, PS, KRA is going to shut down our accounts because we owe them money. So I had to call the CG then. I told him, these are honorable people. They will pay you because they're still owed a bit of money, but midwife them because now they become new taxpayers. We are talking about 17, 18 million Kenyans who are today maybe not in the tax bracket. If we do housing at scale, we start to bring them into the tax bracket. We can't keep on talking about 3 million Kenyans and we have no plan. This is the plan to formalize them. Give them a product, give them the support, and they will be able to produce. So, Chair, this is the summary. Do housing projects at scale. You're going to create jobs, and you're going to have a very long cash circulation process. Because of time, Chair, if you look at the economics of 200,000 homes, that is per year, if you look at the numbers that I gave, if 200,000 homes at an average of about 2.3 million shillings a house, average, yeah? That gives you 460 billion. That is a cost. Out of the 460 billion, Chair, if there is a multiplier effect of 3 times, okay, it means that you have injected in the economy 1.15 trillion shillings. So the levy that we are collecting today, once we scale it up, we should be able to get a lot more money in the economy. Then, Chair, if you take the 10.5% of the mjengo is labor, then it means that we will have about 48.3 billion of money going to wages. So we have got more people coming into the wage bracket. They become more taxpayers. Professor Ndongo is very happy because he's collecting more money, and we are building the nation. And then, Chair, if you look at the average number of formal and informal jobs, you can do up to 2.1 million jobs when you at peak time. So those are the numbers, and I've given the assumptions there. Now, a quick summary of why then this housing levy. We look at it from 2 sides in financing, supply side and demand side. Chair, on the supply side, that is where the developers are. Today, developers are only developing for those who can pay, as I've said. Number 2, they cherry pick. They cherry pick. Why? Because they say money is not emotional. You know, they want to go to where the money is going to give them the highest return. Now, let me demonstrate to you. This year alone, I have advertised so many projects. I'm sure you've been seeing them in the newspapers. The first round I advertised was around Nairobi Metropolitan. I had an influx of investors who wanted to take up those homes. Second round, I went to Western Kenya, Kisii, Migori, all those places. I had one investor out of 55 parcels of land that I whatever. Now, Honorable Wandai and the people from that block, you are also Kenyans. You also deserve affordable homes. So if today we say, let's go and leave it to the private sector, what is the private sector going to do? They're only going to focus on where they're going to get a return. So that is why this housing levy gives us the ability to be able to build these homes indiscriminately in every part of our country. And that's why I wrote to every member of parliament and I requested that you give us land in your constituency. Think about it. 200 units, Honorable Wandai, 200 units is average of about 500 million shillings. That is about 5 times your CDF. That means there's going to be so many jobs back at home. There will be lots of industries your local hardwares are going to thrive. So, Chair, that's the reason why we need to do something on the supply side, because investors will only focus on those who can afford. On the demand side, though, on the other hand, we talked about low incomes. So the buyers, they lack adequate funding. They do not qualify for mortgages. They walk to a bank and the bank will look at them and tell them, listen, you don't qualify, period. The existing mortgages are too costly. Chair, in this high rising interest regime, I'm sure most of you have got a mortgage. Some of your mortgages have reached 18-20% now as we speak. This government is committing through this housing levy to give every Kenyan who wants, because it is not designed for certain people, it's for every Kenyan. If you're in social housing, we'll give you a house at 3%, fixed. Fixed until you finish paying, or Jesus comes, whichever comes first. Number two, if you're in affordable housing, we'll give you fixed at 6% for up to 30 years for you to pay. If you are in market, because majority of the working class are in that market bracket, you're not also forgotten. We're giving you 9% fixed. That is half of what you're paying today in the market. And that has been made possible because of this levy. Because the levy is giving us scale, is giving us cheap funding that we are able to advance to Kenyans. So, Chair, this figure here, I'm just going to say it is the pooling of money from yourself, myself. We bring it together in a fund, and then we are able to give the developer an offtake, so that now the developer does not have to say, this Juakali artisan or that Mamamboga cannot afford. What they see, they don't see Mamamboga, they see the fund. Because the fund will give them a guaranteed offtake. That if you build these houses, according to the contract, we will offtake those units. That's what that slide says in many numbers. And this is the summary of what I've said. We have got various models for social housing, that is for people who earn 20,000 and below. Today, if you earn 20,000 and below, you'll get a house which you'll only pay 3,200 on a diminishing number. That is on a depreciating or amortized number. So you start 3,200, and as you go into the future, that figure is going to be coming down. That is for 1 room, 2 room is 4,800, 6,400. By the way, Chair, these numbers here are not a thumbsuck. These figures, this is the average rental that is being paid by these people who. So that is what that slide means. The next slide is now the. This is now for those who are in affordable housing bracket, and that is those who earn 20,000 and 150,000. That is how we defined you. You will get a studio unit if you want to start a park in life for 5,200 shillings only. You get a 2-bedroom house for 10,400, and you get a 3-bedroom house for 15,600 shillings. Chair, those figures are made possible because of this housing levy. And lastly, those who are in the market, there is something for you as well. You will get a much bigger unit with better finishes, and you will be able to get. Let me get these figures here. 31,300 for a 2-bedroom house, which is quite big, which is 60 square meters, and you'll be able to pay 41,800 for an 80 square meter unit. Chair, there is one more category, which is our folks in the rural areas. If you're in the rural areas, I've got good news for you, is that we will come, we are working with our TVET colleges, with our ABMT centers. Honorable Kalonzo, I have got an ABMT center in Mwingi, where we are putting what we call hydroform machines. And these hydroform machines, they use what is called stabilized soil blocks. Okay, so we can be able to get as many young people to come. And for every block they make, we will pay them 3 shillings. And we will use those blocks to convert the mud houses into decent homes. And if you do that, we'll also be able to give you a facility which you will be paying for a period of time, and it is going to be at 6% if you want to build your rural home. And if you're in the social housing category, you still get it at 3%. So there is something for everybody. in this affordable housing agenda. Chair, I really thank you for giving me enough time to prosecute this issue, and I will be ready for any questions. Thank you.
We thank you so much, Banahinga. By the way, in Mwingi, we had when Mwingi women are themselves building their own houses. No hydro from good plants. You have plants. Who is the next one?
Bilo,
Kero,
then Rugo.
then Rogo.
They have come from after the CS National Treasury.
Oh, yeah.
The Zim will be telling us what plans they have.
They want to come after Juguna or Juguna first?
After Njuguna, because they need to hear him.
I think so.
Yes.
Prof.
But,
I think everybody is really looking for you. They want to hear. Give a bit of comfort like you did to Hinga.
I thought you should be the last. Chair.
I think Kenyans need a bit of comfort.
Yes,
Chair.
Yes.
I thought you could be the last after the rest are finished. Then he wraps up.
Well, what do you feel? Either way.
I'm okay, Chairman, with wrapping up because.
Wrapping up.
Yes.
Okay. So we go to Bilo.
It will all come to you. So Rugo and Bilo.
Thank you, Mr.